The Science of Getting Rich. Preface. This book is practical, not philosophical. It's a hands-on guide, not a deep dive into theories. It's for people whose most urgent need is money. They want to get rich first, and then they can think about philosophy later. It's also for those who haven't had the time, resources, or chance to study metaphysics in depth. But they still want results. They're willing to accept scientific conclusions as a basis for action, without needing to understand all the steps that led to those conclusions. We expect readers to accept the basic principles on faith. Think of it like accepting a law of electricity from someone like Marconi or Edison. Once you accept these principles on faith, you'll prove they're true by acting on them without fear or hesitation. Anyone who does this will definitely get rich. That's because the science used here is exact, and failure is impossible. However, for those who want to explore the philosophical theories and find a logical reason for their faith, I'll mention some key sources here. The monistic theory of the universe comes from Hindu origins. This theory states that everything is one, and that one substance appears in many forms as the different elements of the material world. It has slowly gained acceptance in Western thought over the past 200 years. It forms the basis of all Eastern philosophies, as well as the ideas of thinkers like Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, Schopenhauer, Hegel, and Emerson. If you want to dig into the philosophical foundations, we recommend reading Hegel and Emerson. You should also check out The Eternal News, an excellent pamphlet published by J. Brown, located at 300 Cathcart Road, Govanhill, Glasgow, Scotland. You might also find help in a series of articles I wrote. They were published in Nautilus, Holyoke, Massachusetts, during the spring and summer of 1909, under the title, What is Truth? When I wrote this book, I prioritized clear and simple language above everything else, so that everyone could understand it. The action plan presented here comes from philosophical conclusions. It has been thoroughly tested and has passed the ultimate test of practical experience. It works. If you want to know how these conclusions were reached, read the works of the authors I mentioned earlier. But if you want to see the practical benefits of their philosophies in your own life, then read this book and do exactly what it tells you. Wallace D. Wattles. Chapter 1. The Right to be Rich. No matter what anyone says about how great poverty is, the truth is you can't live a truly complete or successful life unless you're rich. No one can reach their full potential in terms of talent or spiritual growth without plenty of money. That's because to develop your spirit and talent, you need a lot of things. And you can't get those things without money to buy them. People grow in mind, spirit, and body by using things. Society is set up so that you need money to own things. So, the foundation for all human progress has to be the science of getting rich. The whole point of life is to grow and develop. And everything alive has an undeniable right to reach its full potential. Your right to life means you have the right to freely and fully use everything you need for your complete mental, spiritual, and physical growth. In other words, it's your right to be rich. In this book, I'm not talking about riches in a symbolic way. Being truly rich doesn't mean being happy or content with just a little. No one should be satisfied with a little if they're capable of using and enjoying more. Nature's purpose is to advance and develop life. And everyone should have everything that can add to the power, elegance, beauty, and richness of their life. To be okay with less than that is wrong. Someone is rich if they have everything they want to live the fullest life they're capable of. And no one without plenty of money can have everything they want. Life has progressed so much and become so complicated that even an average person needs a lot of wealth just to live a life that's even close to complete. Everyone naturally wants to become everything they're capable of being. This desire to fulfill our natural potential is built into human nature. We can't help but want to be all that we can be. Success in life means becoming who you want to be. You can only become who you want to be by using things. And you can only freely use things if you become rich enough to buy them. Therefore, understanding the science of getting rich is the most crucial knowledge of all. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get rich. Wanting wealth is really wanting a richer, fuller, and more abundant life. and that desire is commendable. Someone who doesn't want to live more abundantly is abnormal. And so is someone who doesn't want enough money to buy everything they want. We live for three main reasons. We live for our body, we live for our mind, and we live for our spirit. None of these is better or more sacred than the others. All are equally important. And none of the three, body, mind, or spirit, can live fully if either of the others is held back from full life and expression. It's not right or noble to live only for the spirit and ignore your mind or body. And it's wrong to live only for your intellect and ignore your body and spirit. We all know the terrible results of living only for the body and neglecting both mind and spirit. And we see that real life means fully expressing everything a person can offer through their body, mind, and spirit. No matter what anyone says, no one can be truly happy or satisfied unless their body is fully functioning in every way, and the same goes for their mind and spirit. Wherever there's an unexpressed potential or a function not performed, there's an unsatisfied desire. Desire is potential looking for a way to be expressed, or a function looking to be performed. You can't live fully in your body without good food, comfortable clothes, and warm shelter. You also need freedom from too much hard work. Rest and recreation are also essential for your physical well-being. You can't live fully in your mind without books and time to study them. You also need opportunities to travel and observe, and intellectual companionship. To live fully in your mind, you need intellectual activities. And you must surround yourself with all the art and beautiful things you're capable of using and appreciating. To live fully in your spirit, you must have love. And poverty prevents love from being fully expressed. A person's greatest happiness comes from giving benefits to those they love. Love expresses itself most naturally and spontaneously through giving. Someone who has nothing to give can't fulfill their role as a husband or father, as a citizen, or as a person. It's by using material things that people find a full life for their body, develop their mind, and grow their spirit. Therefore, it's incredibly important for them to be rich. It's perfectly fine for you to want to be rich. If you're a normal person, you can't help but want that. It's perfectly right that you should pay close attention to the science of getting rich, because it's the most noble and essential of all studies. If you ignore this study, you're failing in your duty to yourself, to God, and to humanity. That's because you can't do God or humanity a greater service than by making the most of yourself. Chapter 2. There is a science of getting rich. There is a science to getting rich, and it's an exact science, just like algebra or arithmetic. Certain laws control how people get rich. If anyone learns and follows these laws, they will get rich with mathematical certainty. You get money and property by doing things in a specific way. People who do things in this certain way get rich, whether they mean to or not. But those who don't follow this certain way stay poor, no matter how hard they work or how capable they are. It's a natural law that similar actions always lead to similar results. So, any man or woman who learns to do things in this certain way will definitely get rich. The following facts prove that this statement is true. Getting rich isn't about your environment. If it were, everyone in certain neighborhoods would be wealthy. Everyone in one city would be rich, while everyone in other towns would be poor. Or people in one state would be rolling in money, while those in a neighboring state would be living in poverty. But everywhere you look, rich and poor people live side by side, in the same environment, often doing the same jobs. If two people are in the same area, doing the same business, and one gets rich while the other stays poor, it proves that getting rich isn't mainly about your environment. Some environments might be better than others. But if two people in the same business, in the same neighborhood, have one get rich and the other fail, it shows that getting rich comes from doing things in a certain way. Also, the ability to do things in this certain way isn't just about having talent. Many very talented people stay poor, while others with very little talent get rich. When we study people who have gotten rich, we find they're pretty average in every way. They don't have more talents or abilities than anyone else. It's clear they don't get rich because they have unique talents or abilities. They get rich because they happen to do things in a certain way. Getting rich isn't about saving money or being thrifty. Many extremely frugal people are poor, while those who spend freely often get rich. Nor is getting rich about doing things that others can't or won't do. For example, two people in the same business often do almost exactly the same things. Yet one gets rich while the other stays poor or goes bankrupt. Considering all this, we have to conclude that getting rich comes from doing things in a certain way. If getting rich is about doing things in a certain way, and if similar actions always lead to similar results, then any man or woman who can do things that way can become rich. This means the entire process falls within the realm of exact science. This brings up a question: is this certain way so difficult that only a few people can follow it? That can't be true, as we've already seen, at least when it comes to natural ability. Talented people get rich, and so do blockheads. Intellectually brilliant people get rich, and so do very stupid people. Physically strong people get rich, and so do weak and sickly people. Of course, you need some ability to think and understand. But when it comes to natural ability, any man or woman with enough sense to read and understand these words can certainly get rich. Also, we've seen that it's not about your environment. Location does matter to some extent. You wouldn't go to the middle of the Sahara Desert and expect to run a successful business, for example. Getting rich requires dealing with people, and being in a place where there are people to deal with. It's even better if these people are open to dealing with you the way you want. But that's pretty much the extent of how much environment matters. If anyone else in your town can get rich, you can too. And if anyone else in your state can get rich, so can you. Again, it's not about choosing a specific business or profession. People get rich in every kind of business and profession. Meanwhile, their next-door neighbors, doing the exact same job, stay poor. It's true that you'll do best in a business you enjoy and feel comfortable with. And if you have well-developed talents, you'll do best in a business that uses those talents. Also, you'll do best in a business that suits your location. For example, an ice cream parlor would do better in a warm climate than in Greenland. And a salmon fishery will succeed better in the Northwest than in Florida, where there aren't any salmon. But apart from these general points, getting rich doesn't depend on you being in a specific business. It depends on you learning to do things in a certain way. If you're in business now, and someone else in your area is getting rich in the same business, but you are not getting rich, it's because you're not doing things the same way that person is. Lack of capital doesn't stop anyone from getting rich. It's true that as you acquire capital, your wealth grows more easily and quickly. But someone who already has capital is already rich, so they don't need to figure out how to become rich. No matter how poor you might be, if you start doing things in a certain way, you will begin to get rich. And you will begin to acquire capital. Acquiring capital is part of the process of getting rich. It's also part of the result that always follows when you do things in a certain way. You might be the poorest person on the continent, deeply in debt. You might have no friends, no influence, and no resources. But if you start doing things in this way, you will definitely begin to get rich. This is because similar actions always produce similar results. If you have no capital, you can get capital. If you're in the wrong business, you can get into the right one. If you're in the wrong location, you can move to the right one. And you can do all of this by starting right now, in your current business and location, to do things in a certain way that leads to success. Chapter 3. Is opportunity monopolized? Nobody stays poor because someone else took away their opportunities. It's not because other people have all the wealth and put a fence around it. You might be blocked from doing business in some areas, but there are always other paths open to you. It would probably be tough to take over any of the big railroad companies. That industry is pretty much controlled by a few. But the electric railway business is still very new, and it offers lots of room for new ventures. In just a few years, air travel and transportation will become a huge industry. It will create jobs for hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, of people in all its different parts. So, why not focus on developing air transportation instead of competing with people like J. Hill for a spot in the steam railway world? It's true that if you work for a steel company, you probably won't become the owner of the factory where you work. But it's also true that if you start acting in a certain way, you can quickly leave that job. You could buy a farm, maybe 10 to 40 acres, and start a business growing food. Right now, there's a huge opportunity for people who will live on small plots of land and farm them very intensely. Those people will definitely get rich. You might say it's impossible for you to get land. But I'm going to prove to you that it's not impossible. You can definitely get a farm if you start working in a certain way. At different times, opportunities shift in different directions. This depends on what society as a whole needs and the current stage of social development. Right now, in America, opportunities are moving towards agriculture and related industries and professions. Today, farmers have more opportunities in their field than factory workers do in theirs. Business people who supply farmers have more opportunities than those who supply factory workers. And professionals who serve farmers have more opportunities than those who serve the working class. There are plenty of opportunities for anyone who goes with the flow instead of trying to swim against it. So, factory workers, whether as individuals or as a group, aren't being denied opportunities. Their bosses aren't keeping them down, and big corporations or wealthy groups aren't grinding them up. As a group, they are in their current situation because they don't do things in a certain way. If American workers chose to, they could follow the example of their counterparts in Belgium and other countries. They could set up large department stores and cooperative businesses. They could elect people from their own class to political office and pass laws that support the growth of these cooperative industries. In just a few years, they could peacefully take over the industrial sector. The working class can become the master class whenever they start doing things in a certain way. The laws of wealth apply to them just as they do to everyone else. They need to learn this. They will stay exactly where they are as long as they keep doing things the same way. However, individual workers aren't held back by their class's ignorance or mental laziness. They can follow the wave of opportunity to wealth, and this book will show them how. Nobody stays poor because there isn't enough wealth to go around. There's more than enough for everyone. You could build a palace as big as the Capitol building in Washington for every family on Earth, just using the building materials available in the United States alone. And with intensive farming, this country could produce enough wool, cotton, linen, and silk to dress every person in the world more lavishly than King Solomon in all his splendor. Plus, there would be enough food to feed everyone sumptuously. The visible supply is practically endless, and the invisible supply truly is endless. Everything you see on Earth is made from one original substance, and all things come from it. New forms are constantly being created, and older ones are breaking down. But all of them are just different shapes taken by one thing. There's no limit to the supply of formless stuff, or original substance. The universe is made from it, but not all of it was used to create the universe. The spaces within, throughout, and between all the visible forms of the universe are filled with the original substance. They are filled with the formless stuff, the raw material of everything. Even if 10,000 times more than what already exists were created, we still wouldn't have used up the supply of universal raw material. So, no one is poor because nature is poor, or because there isn't enough to go around. Nature is an endless storehouse of wealth. The supply will never run out. Original substance is alive with creative energy, and it's always producing more forms. When the building material runs out, more will be produced. When the soil is so depleted that food and clothing materials can no longer grow on it, it will be renewed, or more soil will be created. When all the gold and silver has been dug from the earth, if humanity still needs gold and silver at that stage of social development, more will be produced from the formless. The formless stuff responds to human needs. It won't let anyone be without something good. This is true for humanity as a whole. The human race is always incredibly rich. If individuals are poor, it's because they don't follow the certain way of doing things that makes individual people rich. The formless stuff is intelligent. It's a substance that thinks. It's alive, and it's always driven towards more life. Life's natural and inherent drive is to seek to live more. Intelligence naturally wants to expand, and consciousness wants to extend its limits and express itself more fully. The universe of forms was created by formless living substance, which took on these shapes to express itself more completely. The universe is a magnificent living presence, always naturally moving towards more life and fuller functioning. Nature is designed to advance life. Its main driving force is to increase life. Because of this, everything that can possibly support life is generously provided. There can be no shortage unless God were to contradict himself and undo his own creations. You aren't kept poor because there's a shortage of wealth. I'll show you a little later that even the resources of the formless supply are available to any man or woman who acts and thinks in a certain way. Chapter 4. The first principle in the science of getting rich. Thought is the only power that can produce real riches from the formless substance. Everything is made from a substance that thinks. When this substance thinks of a form, it creates that form. The original substance moves based on its thoughts. Every shape and process you see in nature is a visible expression of a thought within the original substance. When the formless stuff thinks of a form, it becomes that form. When it thinks of a motion, it creates that motion. That's how everything was created. We live in a world of thought, which is part of a thought universe. The idea of a moving universe spread throughout the formless substance. The thinking stuff then moved according to that idea. It took the form of planetary systems, and still maintains that form. Thinking substance takes the shape of its thoughts and moves according to them. When it holds the idea of suns and worlds circling, it forms these bodies and moves them as it thinks. If it thinks of a slow-growing oak tree, it moves in a way that produces the tree. This might take centuries to complete. When creating, the formless seems to follow the patterns of motion it has already set up. For example, thinking of an oak tree doesn't instantly create a full-grown tree. Instead, it starts the forces that will produce the tree, following those established growth patterns. Every thought of a form, when held in thinking substance, causes that form to be created. However, this usually happens along existing patterns of growth and action. If you impress the thought of a specific house design onto formless substance, it might not instantly create the house. Instead, it would redirect creative energies already active in trade and commerce. These energies would then quickly lead to the house being built. But if there were no existing ways for that creative energy to work, then the house would be formed directly from the primal substance. It wouldn't have to wait for the slow processes of the living and non-living world. No thought of a form can be impressed upon original substance without causing that form to be created. Humans are thinking centers, capable of creating original thoughts. Everything a person makes with their hands must first exist as a thought in their mind. They can't shape something until they've thought about it. Up until now, humans have limited their efforts entirely to working with their hands. They've used manual labor on existing forms, trying to change or modify them. They've never considered trying to create new forms by impressing their thoughts onto formless substance. When a person has a thought form, they take materials from nature and create an image of the form in their mind. So far, they've made little to no effort to cooperate with formless intelligence, or to work with the Father. They haven't even imagined that they can do what they see the Father doing. Humans reshape and modify existing forms through manual labor. They haven't paid any attention to whether they might be able to produce things from formless substance by communicating their thoughts to it. We aim to prove that they can do this. We'll show that any man or woman can do it, and we'll explain how. As our first step, we need to lay out 3 fundamental principles. First, we state that there's one original, formless stuff or substance that everything is made from. All the many elements that seem separate are just different versions of one element. All the many forms in living and non-living nature are just different shapes, made from the same stuff. And this stuff is thinking stuff. A thought held within it creates the form of that thought. Thought, within thinking substance, creates shapes. Humans are thinking centers, capable of original thought. If a person can communicate their thought to the original thinking substance, they can cause the creation, or formation, of the thing they're thinking about. To summarize, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made. In its original state, it permeates, penetrates, and fills all the empty spaces in the universe. A thought, in this substance, produces the thing that is pictured by the thought. Humans can form things in their thoughts. By impressing their thought upon formless substance, they can cause the thing they think about to be created. You might ask if I can prove these statements. Without going into all the details, I can tell you that I can prove them, both through logic and experience. By looking back at how forms and thoughts appear, I arrive at one original thinking substance. And by reasoning forward from this thinking substance, I see humanity's power to create whatever they think about. Through experiments, I've found this reasoning to be true. And that's my strongest proof. If just one person who reads this book gets rich by doing what it says, that's evidence supporting my claim. But if everyone who does what it says gets rich, that's solid proof. It's true until someone goes through the process and fails. The theory holds true until the process fails. And this process won't fail, because everyone who does exactly what this book tells them to do will get rich. I've said that people get rich by doing things in a certain way. And to do that, people must learn to think in a certain way. A person's way of doing things is the direct result of the way they think about things. To do things the way you want, you'll need to learn to think the way you want. This is the first step toward getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth, regardless of appearances. Everyone has the natural, built-in power to think what they want to think. But it takes much more effort to do that than to just think thoughts suggested by what you see. Thinking based on appearances is easy. Thinking the truth, regardless of appearances, is hard work. It demands more energy than almost any other task a person faces. Most people avoid sustained, continuous thought more than any other kind of work. It's the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when the truth goes against what things look like. Every visible thing tends to create a matching form in the mind that observes it. You can only prevent this by holding on to the thought of the truth. If you focus on the appearance of disease, it will create the form of disease in your mind, and eventually in your body. This happens unless you hold on to the thought of the truth, that there is no disease. It's only an appearance, and the reality is health. If you focus on the appearances of poverty, it will create matching forms in your mind. This happens unless you hold on to the truth, that there is no poverty, only abundance. Thinking about health when surrounded by signs of disease, or thinking about riches when surrounded by signs of poverty, takes power. But anyone who gains this power becomes a mastermind. They can conquer fate. They can have what they want. You can only gain this power by grasping the basic fact behind all appearances. And that fact is, there is one thinking substance, and everything is made from and by it. Then we must understand the truth that every thought held in this substance becomes a form. And that humans can impress their thoughts onto it so strongly that those thoughts take form and become visible things. When we realize this, we lose all doubt and fear. This is because we know we can create what we want to create. We can get what we want to have, and we can become what we want to be. As a first step toward getting rich, you must believe the 3 fundamental statements I gave earlier in this chapter. To emphasize them, I'll repeat them here. There is a thinking substance that everything is made from. In its original form, it spreads throughout and fills every space in the universe. A thought in this substance creates whatever the thought pictures. You can form things in your thoughts. By impressing your thought onto the formless substance, you can make the thing you think about become real. You must put aside all other ideas about the universe except this single one. You must focus on this until it's firmly in your mind and becomes your usual way of thinking. Read these core statements again and again. Memorize every word, and think deeply about them until you truly believe what they say. If you start to doubt, push it away as if it were a sin. Do not listen to arguments against this idea. Don't go to churches or lectures that teach or preach a different idea. Don't read magazines or books that teach a different idea. If your faith gets confused, all your efforts will be wasted. Don't ask why these things are true, and don't try to figure out how they can be true. Just accept them on faith. The science of getting rich begins with completely accepting this faith.